Good morning, good morning. Welcome to another video on the LuderCo Arms channel. So today, this is going to be a quick Q&A video because there's a bunch of questions that I keep getting asked, and I figure I might as well just make a Q&A video and talk about the answers. So I got some questions on the board here. You don't need to look at that. I just got them up there so I remember to cover everything that keeps getting asked. So let me get the camera set here and we will get started. So one thing I get asked a lot, especially after the band carts that I was building, is and it's asked several ways, but usually it consists of, when you're welding, you're doing X, Y, or Z wrong. You're probably right, but I'm not a welder. I am a mechanic that knows a little bit how to weld two pieces of metal together. So I never had any welding classes. Nobody ever taught me. I learned to weld out of necessity when I was in the Army. Back in the early 90s, when Bill Clinton was elected president, I was a mechanic in the Army at the time, and we went from being a well-funded machine to we don't have any money for anything. And consequently, we needed to start doing some sketchy repairs just to keep things running, and I taught myself how to stick weld in order to do that. Now, prior to that, the only welding I had ever done was oxygen acetylene welding floor pans in Volkswagens using coat hangers for a welding rod, which works great, by the way. If you ever need to weld a floor pan in and you don't have a MIG gun, oxygen acetylene torch with a welding tip and some bare metal hangers work great. But I digress. So I taught myself how to stick weld, and then I bought a MIG welder and I taught myself how to MIG weld. And so I can stick weld, I can MIG weld, and I'm working on TIG, but it's not going so good. I don't know. I just don't seem to have the hand for it. But so if you see me welding and you think I'm doing something wrong, I probably am. But as long as my two pieces of metal stick together, I'm not really that worried about it. Usually what ends up happening, I tend to over weld, but you know, as long as it works, it works. I don't mind doing a little grinding, so that's why. You know, back then we didn't have YouTube University and the internet, so we couldn't look up a video on how to weld. Basically, you could get a book from the library, and then back in the day, my dad gave me that old Lincoln tombstone welder, and so I started stick welding with that, and then I bought myself a Lincoln MIG welder, and just trial and error until I figured it out. So yeah, if you see me welding and something doesn't look quite right, you're welcome to comment on it, but I'm not a welder, so that's why it's done the way it's done. You know, I've never had any of my stuff fail, so as far as penetration and the metal staying together, it's working. So the other question I get asked a lot, and it hasn't been lately, but in the past when I was working on some of the repairing instruments and stuff, is when I'm using my lathe or my mill, I'm doing X, Y, and Z wrong. Again, I taught myself how to do all that through trial and error. I've never taken a class on machine work, never been taught how to do machine work. I bought a milling machine, and I bought a little bitty lathe, and then I bought a bigger lathe, and I ruined a shit ton of tooling over the years, but that's how you figure it out. So time and practice. Pretty decent at it now, but I would never claim to be a machinist. There is a fair bit of difference between what I use machine tools for, which is mostly making parts for guns, and most of those parts were hand fitted back when they were manufactured in the antique times. So it's a little bit different use than a machinist would be doing. So y'all just have to forgive me. I do it the way I know how to make it work. So that's how it goes. So another question I get is, how come we don't get more videos of guns or the Cherokee or the Scout or the pickup truck or the RAV4? So the pickup truck and the RAV4, if you've been watching the channel, you know there won't be any more videos of those because they got destroyed by a drunk driver in my driveway. The drunk driver was running from the cops and plowed him. So we now have a 2024 RAV4 brand new and a 2018 Highlander to replace those two vehicles that got destroyed. So there'll be videos on those coming. Probably not the RAV4 too much because it's got a maintenance warranty on it for like 6 years or something. But the 2018 Highlander, will be doing videos on it because that's my daughter's new car. And there are some things we got to do to it. The Cherokee, it gets fixed all the time because it's my daily driver. And sometimes I don't film whatever I'm doing to it because it's repetitive, like an oil change. I've already done videos on that. Or if I'm in a hurry and I got to get it done, because it takes about twice as long to do any job filming it for a video as it does if I just do the job. So there's that. Guns. I like doing videos of guns, and I would do a lot more videos of guns. There's two things that hold me back from that. One is YouTube. There's some gun repairs and stuff. I can look at my what the hell they call it, the statistics on my videos, and you can tell that they don't push the gun videos. They'll have a quarter of the views of any other video on the channel. But I still do them because I enjoy working on guns, and I know some people, if you search for them, they're there. You just got to search for them. So there's that. Yeah, it's just most of the videos I do is whatever I'm working on at the time. So, we had a hurricane, so I had a video of hurricane cleanup because that's what we were doing. We're still doing that, but I'm not going to video me doing too much more of that. But we're still cleaning up from the hurricane. We're still cleaning up from the cars getting destroyed. So there's that too. I usually when you see a video on the channel, unless I insert it, is usually a month after it actually happened because it takes time to edit the videos and then upload them. So I try to keep a supply of them in the pipe. This is a one-man operation. I film it and I do the work and I edit the videos. So I don't have anybody working for me or doing any of that. And all that takes time. So that's why. And what is my background experience? So I started tinkering with motors, go-karts, lawnmowers when I was a kid. When I was about 14, we lived in South Texas. My uncle had a 64 El Camino that he had bought because he had a 64 Chevelle and he wanted the front clip as a spare. And so when I was 14, he gave it to me to work on. And so I would ride my bike over to their house in the summertime, and I tore the whole top end of that motor off. And apparently this thing, somebody had driven it and never changed the oil. It was full of sludge. he had bought it, like I said, he bought it from behind a gas station somewhere just for the front clip. It was rusted out. The bed, you could actually reach from the bed into the cab. It was so bad. Anyway, so I turned wrenches on that. When I got my first car, my parents' rules for cars were it was my responsibility. So I had a 72 Volkswagen. It was constantly broken, and I was constantly working on it. When I got in high school, I ended up, when I was a senior, I got a job at the Western Auto, changing tires and brakes. Did that until I joined the Army. Was a mechanic in the Army. Back when I was in the Army, the MOS was 63B, which was light wheeled vehicle mechanic. And I went to another school and got an additional skill identifier of Hotel 8 for combat recovery vehicle operator, or a tow truck driver. And that's what I did in the Army. It's what I did in the National Guard when I got out of the Army. So I did my first tour in the Army. I was stationed at Fort Riley and then in Korea. Bill Clinton got rid of 3 divisions, and I was part of that. So I went in the National Guard and came home. Got a job at a Chevy dealership for a little bit. Didn't really like working on cars that much, other than mine. Didn't like working on other people's cars. But ended up getting a job working on heavy equipment for the National Guard. It was a Department of Defense automotive worker is what they called it. Did that for about 10 years. At the same time was in the National Guard as a mechanic. Left that job because you had to be in the Guard to have that job, and I did not want to stay in the Guard until I was 60, because I'd still be in there now, and I'm freaking old. And that's just not, that's a young man's game, especially after we went to Iraq. It was very obvious that that's a young man's game, and I was getting too old for it. So left that job, went into field service on heavy equipment. So I drove a big service truck for several different companies. Just like construction work, you'd have a contract that lasted a certain while, and then you might move to a different company when the contract was up because you needed to keep working. So I worked for several companies, also worked for some dealerships, Komatsu, Liebherr, LeTourneau, worked on tower cranes, LeTourneau JC40 tower cranes at log yards, repairing those, doing inspections. Did that for a bunch of years up until Obama was in office, when they destroyed when we had the housing bubble. So when that happened, all the construction stopped overnight, and all of a sudden, all of us who worked in the construction industry, be it doing construction work or repairing construction equipment as I did, were hopping job to job just trying to get enough hours to make ends meet. And it was getting tough. You get laid off, you have to find another job, and it was just getting out of hand. So I had gotten laid off from the crane company because they had a contract dispute, and so I went to the unemployment office to start looking for another job, and they were like, well, can you do plant maintenance? And I was like, sure. Wrenches are wrenches, and nuts and bolts and nuts and bolts. Welding's welding. Yeah, no problem. So they sent me to interview at Owens Corning factory, and I got that job, and I worked there for 5 or 6 years, and they manufactured the fiberglass mat that goes inside of roofing shingles. And the job was great. The company's great. I have no complaints other than it's fiberglass, and that's not super comfortable to work in 12 hours a day. So then I ended up where I'm at now, which is at a paper mill that manufactures toilet paper and paper towels. and I'm not going to say the name of them because they're very, shall we say, not conservative as a company. And because I do gun work and all that kind of stuff, I try to keep that separate from my channel and my gun work. So that's where I work now. So yeah, I've been pulling on, I'm 52, I've been pulling on wrenches since I was like 12. And getting paid to pull on wrenches since I was about 17. So I'm not an expert. I never claimed to be an expert, but I know a lot of shit. And I've been doing this shit for a long time. And so there it is. That's my experience. So yeah, I kind of sort of know what I'm doing, but you know, not always. And you know, one thing, if you've ever pulled on wrenches professionally, you know, some days you look like a superhero and some days everything fights you from the first hour of the day to the last hour of the day. So, you know, that's just the way it goes sometimes. So that's about everything I can think of. People are asking things that I've done to the Cherokee and how they've worked out. So far, the only parts that I've installed that have not worked out were the rock buggy steering, the first set of steering that I put on it. There's nothing wrong with that steering. It just doesn't have enough fine adjustment for a daily driver. It'd be great for a trail rig. The stuff I replaced it with, the John Curry Correct Link, is awesome. Perfect for a daily driver. Super strong, no problem with it. Other things that I've had problems with, the steering gearbox that I put in, I'm fixing to replace it again. I bought a parts store rebuild and it's junk. It lasted about 3 days before it started making crunchy noises, so I've been living with it because the play wasn't too bad, but it's getting worse, and now the power steering pump's starting to make noise, so I know it's putting metal in that, so we'll be replacing that. I've got a brand new steering gear that we're going to replace that with. Probably won't film replacing the steering gearbox again since I've already done a video on that and it's the same thing, but we'll make a video replacing the power steering pump. That's about it. Everything else has turned out pretty good. I've been pretty happy with it. So if you do have any other questions you'd like answered, feel free to ask. I usually will answer most questions in the comment section when people ask them, but sometimes the same question gets asked so often that I'll do a little video like this. So hopefully this hasn't bored you too much, and we'll get back to working on stuff and getting some more informative videos going. So appreciate y'all watching, and y'all have a good one.